I think the last couple of weeks' roads in the Sahara were definitely the worst roads that I've ever encountered. Even up until today. Terrible roads. And if you remember, the van nearly shook to pieces on those roads. We had to spend an extra $100 American on new shock absorbers because we didn't want the back springs to break. The combi nearly broke in half, if you remember. Remember, it nearly broke in half, and there was mess everywhere inside the van, and the roof rack started to come apart, and it chopped up our tyres. I mean, terrible roads, man. And of course, it was on that road that the truck broke its axles as well. So it was a hell road, man. I've never experienced anything like that then or since. Nothing like I've ever encountered before. And Paula was 2 months pregnant. Just as well, she was a gymnast in her early days and was still in great physical condition. Oh my goodness. And of course, we had another 19,000 kilometres of hostile and unfriendly terrain ahead of us. So do you know what the percentage prospects of a miscarriage would be in that sort of environment? Extremely high. The possibility of a miscarriage was extremely high. And of course, Paula had had her suspicions for some time, but it was brand new news for me. Anyway, well, with that somewhat flabbergasting and exciting news, of course, we wandered out to the large fire that the Tuareg family had going, was roaring away there, and of course promptly told our travelling companions of this new, major, somewhat unexpected development, and of course they were just as stunned as we were, naturally enough. Paula, of course, had some suspicions for some time, but I think that night finally brought it home, excuse me, that the little tummy that she was developing was not just a gastro condition, but no doubt the real thing. And so, of course, that became a cause for a little bit of a celebration, as well as a little bit of concern as well, naturally. But it was cause for a bit of a celebration. And so we just sat around the awesome heat of that central Saharan nighttime fire. Oh man, it was fantastic, sitting around a fire in the cold of the Sahara night, looking up at the night sky. How sensational was that? And of course the conversation was pretty well on a one-track conversation, with a lot of future scenarios discussed, of course. What about the future now? Of course, the whole conversation that evening revolved around our future, in regards to the fact that when we do get to Cape Town around about the end of February, Paula would at that stage probably be about 7 months pregnant. And remember, we had no money, we didn't know anybody there, and naturally now our future plans were all over the place. So this suddenly became a big shift in our thinking even that night, because the AA has suggested to us that when we arrive in Cape Town, we then drive up to Kenya, get a ship across to India and go to Kathmandu. Well, that was all up in the air now, whether that was going to happen or not. So we're going through all these different scenarios, but however, the thing that naturally concerned us more than anything was the idea of a possibility of miscarriage. And so from that day on, Paula's seat in the front of the combi, she had pillows under her bottom all the way to Cape Town to make sure she was comfortable and absorbing some of those terrible terrain that we still had ahead of us. We had at least 2 months of radical terrain ahead of us, and hopefully those pillows will absorb some of that rough terrain, and because we would find ourselves negotiating some severe terrain over the next 2 to 3 months, and we didn't want any sort of mishap here, because we were really keen to have this child now. It didn't take long, man. It doesn't take long for you to accept your situation and say, we don't want a problem here. And so in regard to the roads that lay ahead of us, nearly 36 years later, in 2008, another adventurous couple like us, Janet and Tom Bouchwanger, a Canadian couple which I found on YouTube, I see went on that very same road that we were on more than 36 years earlier, in 1972. In 2008, even then, nearly a decade ago now, so it's 2018 now, but back in 2008, Tom and Janet found the road that we drove on in 1972 between Nigeria and Cameroon was still the same 36 years later in 2008. 36 years after us, it was still the same road, still in the same condition. Can you believe that? Because of internal wars and coups and conflicts and genocide and so forth, and all those sort of unstable issues that Africa is renowned for, much of the isolated infrastructure of these countries remained unserviced and totally neglected. As you can see, it's quite clear they've been neglected. Even up to today, 2018. So you can imagine what we had ahead of us getting close to nearly 50 years ago now. And remember, we were in an underpowered two-wheel drive vehicle as well. And so we thought the Sahara was going to be our biggest challenge in terms of slow progress. But man, what lay ahead of us took this challenge to a whole nother level, believe me. Well, the next morning came around pretty quick, and we find ourselves getting off to an early start, as we did every day, heading out onto the next leg of our journey, which was the small oasis settlement of Tamanrasset, about 600 kilometres to the south. And of course we made sure Paula was very comfortable in that combi, pillows everywhere. We made sure she was comfortable as possible, of course, naturally enough. Actually, I remember when I awoke that morning, I'm going to have a child, I'm going to have a kid. That's what I thought to myself. I must say, I was a little bit nervous as well, because I had not prepared myself to be a father. Oh my goodness. Then I thought, but there's still 7 months to go, so I guess I'll have made the adjustments by then, so it should be okay, hopefully. Being a father, that is. Anyway, even though we only spent a short time in Ainsalar, it was definitely a very memorable experience for us. And of course, the locals even made it more special with their incredible warmth towards us. I mean, it's a really weird feeling when you're leaving a small settlement like this. Sort of 1 minute you're in this oasis talking to the local people, and the next thing, suddenly, you're back in that intimidating Sahara environment again. 600 kilometres of nothingness again. Oh my goodness, such a radical change suddenly happens as you drive away in the morning. Anyway, the terrain, once again, was quite variable, a bit like before, with regular sand dunes and rocky periods, that type of thing. But of course, we had now well settled into the desert trail. And we had been driving through the Sahara for nearly a week or so now. And the mighty Sahara and all its intimidation really had dramatically diminished to us. And desert travel had now really become a lot of fun for us. It wasn't intimidating like it used to be, because we had gotten used to it. And although, as I said before, the seemingly never-ending terrain still made you extremely conscious of the enormity of the Sahara, because you're just going after hill after hill after hill after hill, or after sand dune after sand dune after sand dune after sand dune, after rocky terrain after rocky terrain, and just goes on and on and on and on. So you're still conscious of the enormity of the Sahara. But I have to say here, having a travelling companion made such a huge difference for us. Not just physically, but psychologically and emotionally. Because somehow, I don't know, you just felt more confident when you're travelling with another vehicle. You had more confidence. And so, on reflection now, all these years later, I would have hated to have travelled across the Sahara Desert alone in that old combi. I mean, just looking at that combi did not give you a lot of confidence, believe me. In fact, if we hadn't have put a new motor in it before we left, I would have been packing my next, man. Believe me. And that's a colloquialism for freaking out. I would have been freaking out, man, if we had not have put a new motor in it. Because that motor was absolutely stuck by the time we got to South Africa. 20,000 kilometres even by the time we got to Rhodesia. I had to strip it down, take the motor out, take the pistons out, put new rings in it because it was blowing smoke by the time we got to Rhodesia. Up to 20,000 kilometres. Brand new when we left London. Only lasted 20,000 kilometres. And I put new rings in it again when we got to South Africa. So when we got to South Africa, people were ringing us up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Ringing us up, hate phone calls. Saying, what are you doing, blowing smoke? There's smoke everywhere. Because you could hardly see the car when it was driving along. There was so much smoke, white smoke coming out the back. And people were ringing us up, abusing us. Because of, oh dear, anyway. But here we are in the middle of the Sahara Desert. Middle of the fantastic Sahara Desert. Oh my goodness. Beautiful clear skies. Clear blue skies. Sensational driving conditions. You know, slide into the track. That's all we needed. And we were making beautiful progress. We were having the best time of our lives, man. Often racing one another. Racing side by side. That type of thing. Fantastic fun. But something very unexpected was about to take place very shortly as we pulled up for a bit of a nice lunch break to have a bite to eat. And something else that was unexpected was the temperature was clearly noticeably hotter that day. I would have to say up around near the 50 degrees centigrade mark, 120 degrees Fahrenheit mark. Very, very hot, very uncomfortable. And as I found out later, in later years, that Ain Salah is actually one of the hottest places on earth, apparently. If not the hottest place on earth. And surprisingly, quite a little community lived there. Oh my goodness. In one of the hottest places on earth, why would you live there? But anyway, they seemed happy enough, so anyway, each to his own, I guess. One of the hottest places on earth, man. I don't think I'd be living there, but you know, they seem to enjoy themselves. Anyway, we were enjoying our lunch break in that severe heat when suddenly I felt this gurgle in my stomach and like I had wind. Suddenly, I just got up and I rushed around the other side of the van, and guess what? I had diarrhea, man. Oh my goodness. And you know what? 5 minutes later, I see Paula running around the other side of the van as well. Yes, we had diarrhea. Oh my goodness. So much for Ain Salah's clean water. Man, we spent the next 3 or 4 days, spent most of the time travelling alone the next 3 or 4 days because we would have to stop every 15 to 20 minutes. Driving along and suddenly, slam on the anchors, jump out of the van just in time. Both of us, every 15 minutes, I got to jump out of the van, run around the back of the van. So we just said to the other guys, look, we'll meet you hopefully in 2 hours, 2 hour breaks. So we'll try and keep in touch that way. So that's how we worked it out. And I'd have to say it took a little bit of the gloss off our fun Sahara adventure at that stage. And of course we both lost a lot of weight over that period, over the next week or so, which was a little bit of a concern with Paula being pregnant, of course. Diarrhea, no nutrition, dried food, oh my goodness. Well, as it had been more than a week now since we left Gardea, and having to deal with the often unexpected, we unexpectedly run across the carcass of a camel way out in the middle of nowhere. And when you see the carcass of a camel in the middle of Sahara, it quickly hits home your isolation and the obvious absence of other life. And of course the stillness is quite paralysing too. Clear blue skies, still, no wind, very silent landscape, can't hear anything, everything's quiet as a mouse. We were parked near a small to moderate type rocky landscape, and so I walked up over one of those sort of 3 metre high rocky outcrops, walked over to the other side, and I was standing there on the other side of this rocky outcrop, not being able to see the combi. I couldn't see the vehicle, and I was astounded, man. I couldn't see any movement. I couldn't hear anything. Everywhere I looked, all the way around me, it was dead still. Blue sky, dead still, no movement, no sound. It was eerie, man. Oh my goodness, it's like being on the moon, I guess. There's no planes, no birds, no bugs, nothing, no vegetation, nothing alive. It was dead still and dead quiet. Not many places on this earth that you could have that experience. But of course the staggering beauty is overwhelming as well. The barrenness, the harshness, the aloneness, the absence of life, I mean, it's just astounding. It's absolutely mesmerising, and you clearly recognise that you're on a unique adventure. I mean, it was astounding, man. Stillness, no movement, and no sound. Where would you ever experience that in this world? Nothing moving, no sound.